everyone needs to click got it for the recording in progress.
Hello and welcome to the Torah of our lives. This is Rabbi Aviva Bass. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Sinai of Palm Beach County, and I'm very happy to have as our special guest for the Torah of our lives, Bob Silver, who is a longtime member of the board, a past president and treasurer, and has had a tremendous impact on our temple and has had a lot of experience prior to that, which he will now discuss with you. So I'm going to stop my sharing of this opening screen so that we can all see each other, but Bob and I will be the only ones unmuted for the moment. Welcome, Bob. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing in Judaism?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and David Stern and I will agree on that. We lived in an apartment house. I never forget. It was a 3-story apartment house, and we lived on a 5-story. And we lived on the 3rd floor. Remembering that time, there was no elevators. You walked. Everybody walked up. And you know, my parents weren't religious at all. My father's mother was. She kept a kosher home. My grandmothers on my mother's side, they did somewhat. I don't know really. And that was my bring up. I was fortunate to have a neighbor next door who took care of me when my mother wasn't home. I think it's during the end of the Second World War. When my mother worked and she would take care of me if I came home, she was Orthodox. She belonged to the Orthodox synagogue in the community. Her husband would go to the synagogue every morning. So that was my upbringing, really. I went to Hebrew school, a small Hebrew school. It was like a 1-story Hebrew school. The rabbi taught the class. The rabbi did everything. And
how often was that?
That was a big problem. I had to go to Hebrew school 4 days a week, from 3 to 5 o'clock, 3:30 to 4:30 after school, and then sometimes on Saturday when I was getting close to my bar mitzvah. So I hated it because I couldn't go out and play ball with my friends. They all went out. I had to go to Hebrew school.
So that must have impacted your feelings about Judaism at the time.
And I shared with you this. I remember at the date of my bar mitzvah, as we left the synagogue to walk to the car, because we were having the party, and everybody who was from New York, there was a restaurant called Gluckstein's in Manhattan, and that's where we had the party. And as I walked out of the synagogue, I said to my mother, I'll never forget this, remember, I'm never coming back, ever.
Famous last words when you say the word never.
I'm never coming back. I want nothing to do with the synagogue. I'm never going to go into the building. I want nothing to do with screwing. It screwed me up in my life. I couldn't play ball. I couldn't do anything for 2 years. So that was my day. That was at 13 years old. So I was telling that to my mother. I'll never forget that as I left and walking away. And I said, I would never come back.
But here you are, such an impactful member of our temple community. So something must have brought you back. Why don't you tell everybody about what brought you back to your Judaism synagogue?
We lived in Hollis, Queens, New York, in a co-op, and my parents lived nearby. And one day my father called me and said, you know what, Temple's having a meeting. Maybe you should come. It's good. Maybe it'd be good for business or whatever it is. You can meet some nice people. Good. I walk into the synagogue. This is a conservative synagogue, and I'm 40 years younger than everybody in the building. I'm like a little kid. Most of the people there I knew because they were friends of my father. I sit down to listen to whatever the meeting is. The rabbi comes over to me and says, oh, it's nice that you came. You know, it would be a good idea. Maybe you can get some of your friends to come. It would be good that we have some younger people in the temple. Okay. So I said, I'll see what I can do. A year later, they made me the secretary of the temple because they wanted young people in the temple, and he felt that would be a good way. 2 years later, they made me the president for the same reason. And I said to them, remember, I'll be the president, but I don't show up on Saturday morning. Get somebody else to sit in on Saturday Shabbos. I don't come Saturday. And they said, that's no problem. We'll handle that. So we lived there for about 10 years. There's another interesting trivia question. One of the members of our synagogue daughter was named in that synagogue.
Right. And I know this, but I don't know if everybody else knows this because you told me.
Yeah, Howard Cohen's daughter was named in the House for Jews. And so it's, that was just some trivia. So we lived there about 8-9 years.
Hi, Sandy. We see Sandy in the, you can come on into the frame, Sandy, if you want to come in and let everyone see you. Sandy's just out of the camera view. Hello, Sandy.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened was, we just had my younger daughter, and she was 6 months old. We moved to New Jersey, to a town called Hazlet, New Jersey, which is down the shore area. And we moved there. We're living there a few years. Carrie, who you see in this picture, was going to start Hebrew school. So we decided to join the temple there, Temple Shalom. And it was Mattawan, New Jersey, became Aberdeen, New Jersey. And we became there. And I got involved in the temple. It's young people with families. They hired a new rabbi there, and we all loved him. He was there for 30 years. So he also had as my daughter will tell you, he bar mitzvahed her, married her, and named her daughter. So that's the relationship she had with her. So it was interesting getting involved in the temple, doing various things. Even Sandy, believe it or not, taught a confirmation class at one time.
Great.
We were also involved in something else. We were also involved with a yoga center in Massachusetts, a very famous yoga center, and we got involved with that. And even though we were members of this temple, and I became president for a while, and we also got involved with Jewish Renewal.
Right, I was going to ask you about that. So tell us about Kripalu and your experiences there.
Kripalu is one of the oldest yoga centers in the world, I think. It's located in Pittsfield, not Pittsfield, I forget the town.
I don't remember.
And it's basically a teaching center for meditation, yoga, and everything else. It's a huge facility. It's on a lake. It's a beautiful building. It's right next to the Tanglewood. If you've ever been up to Tanglewood, it's across the street. That's where it is. Yeah. And we've been involved. Sandy went up there. Sandy became a yoga teacher through Kripalu. I got involved with the financial management. And
somehow, Bob, I can't imagine you sitting and just sitting quietly for a meditation. Did you meditate?
Never happened.
Okay.
It's a yoga. I never did yoga. I never got it. It was not fun. And your rabbi knows part of the story. They had a guru there who was terminated.
That was a scandal. I remember that. Because I had friends who were also becoming rabbis at the time in rabbinical school who liked to go to Kripalu, and this was a big scandal at the time. Yes. But anyway, getting back to your involvement, though, let's talk about the intersection of your Jewish life and your professional life, because your father said, "Why don't you go to the synagogue and get some younger people?" And you ended up doing these clubs and then got involved that way. But did you find the business connections, and how did your
not really? The only connection the synagogue had, and I shared it with you the other day, that were three other couples who we met during the time of the synagogue, who are now friends today. They all live in Boynton Beach, believe it or not. Unfortunately, two of the wives passed away. So there were four of us who know each other 60 years. My kids, my daughter knows their children. So it's like, but it's
that's wonderful. Yeah.
So.
That's really wonderful. So, so let's talk about your involvement on boards, because I know it was not just the synagogue board that you were involved in, but you got involved in, was it Federation?
No, I never got involved in Federation. Sorry to tell you. That was not me. I never got involved in that part.
Okay.
Involved in boards. I was on the board of the temple in Queens. I got involved with the temple in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yes, I've done various things in the synagogue. I've learned a lot of things in the synagogue. I think what I learned from the first synagogue, that people who really care about the synagogue survive. And that was the first thing I learned. You got to have people who want to care about it. And these people I got involved with, again, who are 40 years older than me, that told me that. They always told me that. You got to you got to want to do it. And that was the whole thing of my involvement in the synagogue.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's a timely question because you actually, at some point, you went out to Russia and had a little run-in with the KGB. You almost did.
Yeah,
and,
you want to hear that story? It's interesting. In 1979, I was offered a position in one of the most famous art galleries in New York City, called Nola Art Gallery and Hammer Galleries. The company was owned by a gentleman by the name of Armand Hammer, who started and owned Occidental Petroleum. That's who he is. He bought the gallery because the gallery in 1979 was failing. It was going to go out of business. And the art world said that Armand Hammer, who had a major art collection, he would be the right person to buy it. And he bought it. I have no idea. He didn't pay much for it. And at that time, they were looking for a financial, somebody to handle the finances there. And I had no art background at all. I knew nothing about the art world. I knew nothing about painting, sculptures, nothing. And I found that after I got hired, that was the reason I got hired, because Dr. Hammer didn't want somebody who was involved in the art world. He wanted somebody from the financial end. So I got this job in 1979, yeah.
You had a very interesting story how you got the job.
Oh.
Because, the interview was not like any other interview you had been on.
Dr. Armand Hammer, who I had no idea who he was. I thought he was Armand Hammer baking soda, okay? That's who I thought he was. I didn't know anything. So I go to look him up, and I'm looking up, who's Armand Hammer? And I look up, oh, he owns a company called Occidental Petroleum. Oh, yeah, that's a big company. So I knew nothing else about him. He lived in New Jersey, not far from where we lived, in Cold Neck, New Jersey. He had a property there, had the airport there. And I met with him. I came to the office, I met with him. And this gentleman, we always laughed. He's about 5'5", maybe. Always wore a blue suit with a red tie with an American flag on the lapel. And the joke was maybe he only had one suit, but that was the joke. But that's what he wore. So I met with him, and for the hour of the interview, we talked about his property in New Jersey, his commuting to New York by train for $6 a month, many years before, and raising cattle in Red Bank, New Jersey. This is my interview. I spent an hour with him. At the end of the interview, I had to go meet the next day his financial advisor. His financial advisor by the name of Maury Leibowitz was interesting. He was a CPA, a clinical psychologist, and a professor at UCLA, all at once. That was him. And as I left the meeting with Dr. Hammer, his last words to me were, if Maury doesn't give you what you want, call me. That was my interview. I get home, Sandy says to me, what happened? I said, I think I got a job. He said, what do you mean you think? He never even asked me anything about, he never asked me one question about my professional ability. Of course, I found out later he knew all about it. I mean, I didn't even know that. And then I met his financial advisor, and then I became the financial executive for the gallery. And that was the beginning. In 1980, we represented an artist. I don't know, I'll tell you the name. If you heard about him, please let me know. By the name of Leroy Neiman, who was a big sports artist who also did Playboy. Leroy got a contract with ABC in 1980 to do a painting at the Olympics in upstate New York, right? So I have to go there. What do I know? I got to go with him in case he needs paint. You know, what else do I know? I don't know anything about it. I went there, and every night at the end of the TV show, he would paint the flag on this big mural of all the participants in the Olympics. Okay. By the way, I never saw the big thing that year. If you remember, was the American hockey team winning the Olympics. I never saw that. I saw 2 speed skating events, maybe. That was my whole venture into the Olympics. And what happened was, at the end of the last day of the TV of the Olympics, Leroy forgot a flag. And he had a list of all the flags. And I said to him, "You forgot a country." And he looked at me like I was crazy. "What do you mean? I have a list." I said, "You forgot a flag." And you wouldn't, when I tell you the country, you would laugh. The country was Israel.
Yeah.
And I never look at the painting that was done in 1880 on the painting. It's a big flag of Israel. The only reason being that was the last thing he had to do. And then ABC took it over, and his painting toured the United States at all the ABC studios that was what was paid. Getting back to Russia.
Yeah.
Favorite topic today. 1982, Dr. Hammer offered the Russian government his collection of art. He has a major
Bob, can you be careful not to cover your mouth, because I know that some of our, it's hard for them to see you. Yeah.
What happened was he made an arrangement with the Soviet Union to have paintings from the Hermitage and Pushkin Museum sent to the United States to tour the country for 6 months. The problem being is that his paintings had to go over there, call it collateral, call whatever you want. The Russians want to make sure they got it even. So we were over there, 1982 and 84, I think, and we were able to go through the museum, pick out whatever they wanted to give us, really, and fly the paintings from Moscow to New York. 2 problems. We had to use the Russian airline a lot because the Russians insisted. And number 2, we had to insure the paintings with the Russian insurance company. Value of these paintings was $63 million. This is what we took. We brought it to New York, and we had a problem. Problem being was very simple. We had to transport the paintings, and don't ask me why we went to New York to end up in Washington. But I didn't want any press or anything at the airports. I just wanted to get them out, put on a truck. We had 2 Russian curators with us, put them in a limousine, send everybody to Washington and get out of there. What happened was, as I got to the airport that afternoon, there were about 30 TV cameras, all kinds of press, and I couldn't believe what was going on. I called security at JFK, and they said, "Bob, we have a problem." They told me who else is on the plane. I don't know if you remember Olga Korbut, the Russian gymnastic team. That was on the plane also. So we had her. They were very nice to me. They allowed me to take the curators the back way out of Kennedy to a basement where a loading dock was. They never went through any security, nothing. They just went. We just took them and they went. I get them to put them in a limousine to take them to Washington. And it was very funny. I know the women here would laugh. These women were spending 8 weeks in the United States. They had a suitcase, maybe 12 by 12. That was their whole suitcase with everything they took. They didn't take anything else. Wow. So I was putting them in the limousine, and I spoke no Russian at all. So it was, just my hand gestures to them. And a gentleman taps me on my shoulder and says, "Mr. Silva, you forgot a bag." "Oh, thank you." I put it in a limousine, send the limousine away, turn around, this gentleman's standing there. And he says, "Would you like to know who I am?" I said, "Yeah, you know who I am." And he takes out his badge, and it was the KBG. So that was my meeting with the KBG. It was, like
KGB,
okay.
yeah.
That's who it was. So, we did that. And, the only story that was also interesting for me, when I was in Russia to get the paintings put together, or whatever you want to call it, I was one Friday afternoon, this gentleman who drove me around said to me, would I like to go to synagogue? Okay. So that evening he picks me up, drives me to a big apartment house, I think. And somebody meets me at the apartment house to take me into the building. I walk into the building, into the basement, and there were about 300 people there. At that time, if you remember, there were no synagogues, buildings in the Soviet Union. And the synagogues, whoever met in the basements of buildings.
Yeah, well, it was the time of the Refuseks, right? I mean, I had a bracelet for one of them, I remember. So, yeah. So you met in the basement. What was it like?
I went to the service, and they honored me like they want to give me an aliyah. I didn't take it. And I'm listening to the service, and you got to remember, it's in Russian and Hebrew. I don't understand neither. So I was waiting for the English, which never happened. The whole sermon was in Russian and Hebrew. So that was interesting, And we did it again in '84, again with an exhibition. The problems in New York were, I'll mention a rabbi's name, and some of you will tell me who it is. Rabbi Meir Kahane. Anybody remembers the name?
Oh, yeah. Meir Kahane, yeah.
He calls me about a week before the exhibition gets to New York and starts screaming at me on the phone, how can this Jewish kid send money to Russia? That's all he keeps telling me. I said, what are you talking about? Well, all the money you're making on the show, you're sending to Russia. I said, absolutely not. The National Gallery in Washington is getting all the money. I had lunch with him one day at his office on 14th Street, Manhattan. And then because of these problems, the Russian government insisted that we put bulletproof glass in front of every painting. So every painting that was in the gallery that day had bulletproof glass in front of it, what we put for the show. The government, that was their request.
That's a strange thing, though. Who's going to shoot a painting? Maybe they would steal a painting, but it's an odd thing. You would think maybe they'd shoot people, but not a painting. But
that's what they
anyway.
were. There's one story about the exhibition, you laugh. One of our directors in the gallery was friends with Zero Mostel. Everybody knows Zero Mostel. He invited Zero to come to the gallery the day before the show opened to look at the paintings. So he came, and we had the two Russian curators with me. And he walking around the paintings. Now you got to picture the scenario. He's speaking to the Russian curators, one sentence in English, one in Yiddish, and one in Russian. And they're looking like he's crazy because they only get every third sentence. That's typical Zero Mostel. The only thing Sandy and I got out of it, we were his guests that he was doing Fiddler in New York at the time, I believe. And we got what they call house seats for the show. So we saw.
Oh, great. Wow, you got to see him in it. Fabulous.
What else interesting? And my daughter, we talked about this the other day. I got a call from Arm & Hammer one day that Ladybird Johnson wanted to come to the gallery to see a paintings by an artist called Bob Timberlake. He did Western art. Okay, but it was on a Sunday. Like, I can say, no, I don't work on Sunday, right? No. And I was asked to go, I go. So I decided to take the kids, my daughter, and the children, and we'll spend the day in Manhattan. Why not? It's a nice day, we'll go to Manhattan. What happened was, we got into the gallery at 10 o'clock, and Ladybird was doing, I think, at 11. As I walk into the gallery, my wife, who's a typical Jewish mother, says to me, how could you not serve her anything? So I had to send somebody out to the Graciti's, whatever the store is, to get a bottle of wine, cheese, and crackers so we can serve something. I didn't realize what problems that would cause. And the Secret Service shows up. And they start asking me who opened the wine, who got the crackers, who opened the crackers.
Wow.
Okay. And I said, what? This is what I need, right? At 11 o'clock, a Ford pulls up in front of the gallery. Ladybird comes out with a friend of us. They walk into the gallery, and I've never met her. She walks over to me and says, Bob, I want to apologize for taking you out of home for the weekend, on Sunday. I said, you're away from your family. I said, I'm sorry to tell you, Ladybird, you're right behind me. And so my daughter I mean, we talked about this the other day. My daughter said, I don't they remember it, but that's what happened. That was the whole story. So that was it. What else happened? So I spent.
Well, I wanted to ask you about what life lessons you've learned. What wisdom could you impart from all of this experience that you've had?
The person that will fully understand me is the gentleman I'm looking now, David Stern, who understands what I'm going to say now. Arm & Hammer always said to me, you got to always remember when you make a deal, everybody's got to walk away happy or there's no deal. And if you don't do that, you'll never have a deal. And if you don't do that, and he also did something else that I never forget. When we met with the attorneys, he was so against legal people being at these meetings. His answer was, I'll send you the papers, you draw up the document, I'll take care of it. He never wanted attorneys involved in the meeting because he always said to me, they have big egos and they want to prove you how smart they are. And he said, I don't want them. The other thing was I learned that you never tell, his first comment to me was, he always said, Bob, don't tell me about your problems. I have more than you. Solve them and give me the solutions. Always said that. Because he said, he's running I'll say a little bigger company than I had. And, Oxy is, I think at one time was the second largest oil company in the world. With no gas stations. Remember, they never had a gas station. So that's what I learned, that you got to do that. And if you don't succeed. You don't.
Well, the last question I want to ask you before I ask for questions. So the last thing I wanted to ask you before I open up the floor for questions is that you shared with me a hobby of yours that I wasn't aware of, and maybe some of the other people online are not aware of. What is one of your favorite things to do?
I have two hobbies.
Okay.
I learned how to fish as a kid from my grandfather when I was 4 years old. I fished all over in Brooklyn. I fished Coney Island. People were from Brooklyn. I fished on Coney Island Pier when I was a little kid. I used to fish in the winter in Coney Island. And my only wonderful part of going to Coney Island was I could go to Nathan's for a hot dog on the way home. That was the best to Coney Island. And the other story that I didn't share with you at the beginning, when I was a member of Holliswood Jewish Center, we had two very, let's say, well-known, wealthy members of the temple. One gentleman's name was Nathan Handworker. I don't know if you know who he is. He's the owner of Nathan.
Yeah.
Second guy was the president of Barton's Candy. And these two guys, when I needed money, when I was the president, called them, and the game was played, they would always ask me, what's the other guy giving you? And that was the game we played all the time. Whatever I got from this guy, I had to call the other guy to tell him what he gave. And this is what I learned. And it was crazy. And they gave me what they wanted. So that was interesting. And, so what did I learn? I did something else in the synagogue that most people would think it terrible. Terrible. We used to raise money for Yom Kippur the old-fashioned way. I don't know how many people remember. We used to call your name out and ask you for your contribution. Set up so that we knew the top donors going down. So we started with the top and we make it less, right? To collect the money, I came up with a program that after Yom Kippur night, we would invite the members back to the synagogue. We would have a little music and coffee and cake. And at that time, you would pay your contribution. And that's how we collected all the money. Didn't have to wait for weeks for people to write in money. So we did that. And, today, I don't know how many people would like that. I mean, your name to find out.
But you didn't mention your other hobby, though, Bob.
Was I cook very well. And Sandy hasn't cooked, she's not here, I can say that. Maybe 12, 15 years. So I cook, and I enjoy cooking. But again, I only have one customer. Right? I have one customer that I cook for. And my favorite,
one customer, yes. I thought you said one custom. Yeah, one customer, yeah.
My favorite remark to Sandy, if she complains, I says, here's $2, go to McDonald's.
Oh, gosh.
What can I do? I mean, she doesn't like it. I'm not going to. I cook some very nice dishes. I play with it. I don't have to really use menus. I do once in a while. And I really, you know, I mean, I have no background. My father, it's interesting. My father had a restaurant in New York for 40 years in the garment center. He couldn't cook either. He ran a very good restaurant. He couldn't cook a thing. If he had to cook, that's what we're closed tomorrow. But that was, that was it. So, that's what I did. Do I still cook? Yes, not as much as I like to. I play around.
Mm-hmm.
When my daughter comes to visit, she always says, "Why don't we cook something in the house? We'll make it, and she'll help me make it." So,
That's great. Well, maybe she'll have something to add to this also. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone unmute. And if you have a comment or a question for Bob, if you could put up your little mechanical hand so we can call on you. And Jane, if you could be the person to tell me who to call on next, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Can you unmute everyone?
Everyone needs to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, so I see David's hand up. That's the only hand I'm seeing.
David Stern? Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Bob, you shared a story with me about Arm & Hammer on their donations and how he handled it. Why don't you share that with the group?
Okay. I would get a phone call every year from an attorney called Louis Nizer. I think everybody knows who Louis Nizer is. He was head of the UJA in the New York area. And he would call me every year for Dr. Hammer to give a donation.
Oh.
Dr. Hammer would give $25,000 a year to the UJA with 3 conditions. No receipt, no acknowledgement, no public relations. The reason being, he dealt with the Arab world. Remember that. His major business was the Arab world. And if the Arab world ever found out that Arm & Hammer was giving money to the UJA, it wouldn't be too good. So that's what we did there.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Wow. Okay. Other questions, comments, maybe from family members of Bob's? Oh, I see Lori and Steve.
Stephen Laurie, mute.
Yeah, so Bob, I loved your story about Nathan Handwerker for the following reason. Many, many years ago, my dad was between jobs and business had failed, and he got a call from his cousin. And his cousin said, "So Dave, why don't you come into the business with me?" And my father said, "I don't want to make hot dogs in Coney Island." My dad's cousin was Nathan Handwerker.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
Relationship.
Yep.
There.
And so my dad went into the dry cleaning business instead of making hot dogs. So thanks for the memory, Bob. And also I wanted to say that there must be something in the water in Brooklyn that made us kids run away from Judaism, but there must be something in the water that made us come back at some point. So,
well, it was the water they put in the boiled bagels.
Maybe so, Rabbi. I don't know. But thanks for the memories, Bob.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, I have a question. What was the last name that you said of Nathan?
Handwerker, Handwerker.
Handwerker.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The name.
So I'll just share that growing up, we grew up pretty religious, I would say, even though my dad said he didn't grow up religious. Our family was pretty religious. There was a pretty golden rule that you could go out and do stuff after Friday night dinner. But we had Friday night and Shabbat dinner on a regular basis and pretty much grew up differently than what my dad said, rejecting it. It was more of a family affair. And we went to temple pretty regularly, and their social network was really involved around the synagogue. So that was my exposure and what my dad and my mom taught to us. The other thing, when he's reminiscing about his stories about all these pretty famous people that we met, I was pretty young when I met those famous people, and I had no idea that no one else got to travel the places that we traveled and saw the places, in Switzerland. My dad had to do some work, so we went to Switzerland, and just the art gallery scene gave us a lot of exposure that I really appreciate now. But at the time, the people that I met, the artists that we met, and my mom's a pretty accomplished self artist, so we were around art, but I didn't realize Leroy Neiman and some of the major league people that I was exposed to as a child was pretty incredible. So it was awesome.
That's great.
Well, every comment is Carrie didn't know Leroy Neiman, but if you go to her house today, she will show you Leroy Neiman, right?
Great. I see Maddie Mogul's hand, computerized hand.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Hi.
Maddie.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
There's so many mentions of Nathan Handworker. I have to share this. When I was a student teacher at Brooklyn College, I had gotten a job through the placement office, and it was at Nathan's. And everyone says, oh, yeah, did you make the hot dogs? No. Little did I, or very few people knew, that upstairs they had an office. And part of my job responsibility was to chart the weather, because the weather determined how much sales they had, you know, for that day. Lousy weather, what sales were down, and so on. And they gave me a key to a private parking lot that was somewhere near, it was off Stillwell. It was close to one of those Giuliano's or something. It was next to like an older restaurant. So I had my little key. I would go there, unlock the lock and open the gates. And then I was entitled to order lunch. So they would bring up whatever I ordered from downstairs. And I thought that was pretty cool. And pay was better than I think I could have gotten anywhere else. So I had to just throw that in. I hope it wasn't, boring.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Maddie. Anyone else?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jane.
Bob, so how long were you involved in the art world? How old were you when you started at the art gallery, and how long did you stay in that whole world?
I started in the end of 79. I stood there to the end of 80, and I decided I wanted to do something for myself. I had a background in forensic accounting, and I had an offer to become a partner in a firm in New York who did specialize in that. So I went to Dr. Hammer and said, I want to leave. And his first comment to me was, do you want more money? I said, no, it's not that. I want to do this. So the only promise I had to make to him is that I would be available for a 6-month period if he needed that I had to do something, which I did. So I left in 1990 to become a partner.
90, yeah. That made more sense. Yeah.
Become a partner in this accounting firm in New York.
So
yeah, because I know you went to Russia in 82 and 84 for him. So you were still working for him through the 80s. So until 90. Wow.
I was still with him. There's one painting, and you're going to laugh when I tell you this. Armand Hammer had a great collection of paintings. He had a painting that everybody on this screen saw in public school. There isn't anybody I know who never saw this painting. If you remember the painting of George Washington on a horse, that's on the painting. That was part of his. So
that's great. Part of his collection.
It was in every public school.
Yep.
It's another thing. It's interesting. We did the exhibition. We created posters of some of the art. One of my doctors I use in Boca, my R&T doctor, has this poster in his office. So every time I go there, I laugh. I said, one day he said, you know this? I said, I put it together. You did? I said, yeah, I'm the guy who produced this wonderful creation that you have on your wall. So I always laugh when I go into his office and I see this piece that was taken out of the exhibition, I think, in 82. So,
wow.
So, yeah, it was interesting. We produced all that stuff, catalogs, posters, and everything else. And, but again, it was all part of the art world. And mostly because I dealt with a modern artist. Names you might not know, Robert Motherwell. I also dealt with a very famous artist. I will tell you something that you don't know. I dealt with Salvador Dali for a month. Everybody knows who Salvador Dali is, right? How many of you know his wife is Jewish?
Wait, who's Salvador Dali?
Yes. Dali is Jewish, yeah. So I never knew that, but when I did some homework, I found out this Dali's wife was Jewish. Yeah. Dali, a character that whatever you heard about is true. That's what he is, complete, off the wall.
Did you say you lived with him for a month?
No, I dealt with him because we created a serigraph holographic, H-O-L-O, I forget how you spell it.
Holographic?
Holographic art, correct. And he was supposed to produce the piece that we were going to produce and sell. Well, we paid him $250,000 to create it. He never created it. We walked away after.
Oh, wow.
The only thing I got out of it, and I'll tell you this, which is interesting. The last day I met with him to tell him that we are not going to continue this because he never produced anything. He was very upset. He went to the back, and he was at the Pierre Hotel. He went to the back of a room, got a piece of paper, maybe 6 by 6, got a magic marker, and did a drawing of Don Quixote on a horse. And gave it to me. Say, here. And that was it. I don't know where it is today, but that's what I got from Dali at the end of
that was for your $250,000?
No, it's called.
I hope you got the money back.
No, we never got the money back.
Oh my gosh!
Never got the money back, and he never created anything, never created a piece, and that's who he was. I mean,
wow.
When we first signed the agreement, he was very enthusiastic. Nobody has ever done this before, especially when any of his work was never done that way. And he was thrilled to do it. But 30 days later, no painting, nothing. So we walked away.
Maybe it was a matter of time, because he always had those melting clocks. So he didn't keep good time.
Dali, what you heard about Dali was all true. He's the guy who stayed at the Pierre Hotel for a month every year and would go down during the day. And if you see Con Edison workers working in the street, he would take them to lunch at the Pierre. That's Dali. I mean, that's what he would do. But that's what the man, I mean, so whatever you heard about him is true. Dealing with him is, I go to meetings with him. We never got anything accomplished. So, it was like, we gave him $250,000 in day one. And day 30, we walked away with this little piece of drawing. That's what I got.
Oh, gosh.
When you said the paper that he took the magic marker was 6 by 6, did you mean 6 inches by 6 inches or 6 feet?
Yeah, just a little.
Maybe an art pad.
I can't hear you.
He took a piece of art pad from a pad.
Sketch pad paper, yeah.
He just got a magic marker because I remember it was a black magic marker, and he did a sketch of Don Quixote and a horse and gave it to me.
Well, Bob, if you find that piece of paper, it probably is worth a lot. Did he sign it?
You talk about what I have. Leroy Neiman did a piece in 1980 before the World Trade Center went down, right? It was called New York, Lower New York or something. And the paint and the serigraph was worth maybe $250, maybe. Nobody wanted it. It's a picture of New York with the World Trade Center. What happened in 1981? No more World Trade Center.
You mean 2000? 2001.
2001.
No more Trade Center, right? That painting, that serigraph went from $250 to $5,000 in one day. Because everybody now, about 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I wanted it for me. I called Leroy up and Leroy was Leroy. And he was saying, what the hell do you want this piece of crap? It's nothing, what do you want it? I said, I would like it. He said, oh, I'll send it to you. Good. 3 days later, I get a tube with the painting brought into it. But to make sure I can never sell the painting, okay? It's hanging right, I'm looking at it now. It's in my office here. It's signed to Bob and Sandy, love Leroy.
Oh.
But I have the painting. My daughter has, Carrie, what do you have? You have some of the animals?
You have to unmute, Carrie.
You got to move.
I have the actual paintings or the lithographs. I have some lithographs of like the runner, the tennis player. I have, oh no, Jacob has the zebras. We have the big zebra one.
So we have, they got them all, you know, so they took them all. There's another interesting fact. The building that Nola Gallery was in on 70th and Madison was built as a home in 1907. 1907 is when they built this home. At that time, it wasn't fashionable to live on the east side. It was more fashionable to live on the west side. Mm-hmm. So that was not the proper. When we took over the building, the basement was the kitchen. Was the kitchen of the building. They had cabinets in there that were built in 1907. I was fortunate to take out some of the cabinets. One of these cabinets were in my home till 21 years ago, and now they're sitting in my daughter's living room on the wall. Oh. She has one of the cabinets. It's the original cabinets. I know Carrie will tell you. Oh, I think everything is original. They replaced 2 or 3 little pieces of it. But that cabinet was built in 1907. And it's neat. Still, so she has it as a, in the house.
That's great. Well, we're almost out of time. So I will take one more question from someone who hasn't asked one yet. So.
Oh, Eric and Betty.
Hey, it's me. And I want to know, Bob, what was your best day fishing so far?
Fishing for tuna years ago, many years ago, I was blessed to be able to fish with 4 gentlemen who did fish for a living. They were both captains of fishing boats in the Jersey Shore. So I got to know them very well. I fished with them. And I was the amateur. They were the professionals. And we used to go out on the tournament. I only had one requirement. I brought lunch. They brought everything else. I brought lunch with it. And we fished tuna. We caught a big tuna once that we had to sell because we were going to do with it. So they sold it to a company in Japan. I get this. And we took it out of the boat, and they had a truck from JFK Common take the fish to JFK to send it to Japan.
Oh my gosh. It was that big a fish?
It was about 800 pounds.
How much? 900?
How much? 900-pound fish?
My daughter knows who my other partners were. You know, she learned to fish with them. My daughter learned how to fish because of me and my fishing buddies. And they would take her and they taught Carrie how to fish. So it's like
but Bob, how do you catch a 900-pound fish?
How do you catch it?
Very carefully.
Small shoulders. We caught the fish about 30 miles off the Jersey coast.
Oh.
We caught the fish
with a net.
No. With a line, no.
You didn't catch it like this
with outriggers. With outriggers, there's like lines that it would come up. That's not the fish you catch off a rod. They have outriggers that are.
2 hours to bring in the fish.
Wow.
Once we got the fish in the boat, it started to pour, rain. And now we're 30 miles from where we had to go. So we had to call the dock to tell them that we had the fish. And they had to call whoever the company was who would send a truck down to take the fish and pay us. And then we came in, and what we did was they have what they call, looks like a big garbage bag. It's huge. It's called the tuna bag. You take the fish and you put it in the bag, and you take all the ice you have on the boat and throw it in there to keep the fish fresh until you get into land. And then they took the boat, they weighed it, and that was it. So yes, Japanese were always the big buyer of this. The small tuna you see, the baby tunas, maybe 20, 30 pounds, it's not good eating fish. They're nice to catch, but they have no value compared to a big tuna. They're small, they're 20 pounds. You don't want this. The problem is, I did this once in my life. Will I ever do it again? No, never. You got to have right.
That's another life lesson.
No, you got to have the right equipment. You got to have the right facility. You got to have everything right. It's not like you go on a lake here, catch 2-pound fish. Oh, I caught a fish.
Right.
Yeah. It's a different game. It's a different,
Yeah, it's a completely different thing.
Realize how hard, if you ever watch, I do all the time, these tuna TV shows, and they're catching the tuna. And these are maybe 150, 200 pounds, maybe 300 pounds. And it's hard. It's really hard.
Wow.
Course.
I bet.
It's not, it's not a thing I would want to do in my life. But it was fun. I fished a lot of other stuff, but I never fished in a lake or a river. That was not me.
Only on the ocean, right?
Now when I go fish, I fish the Gulf because I have my friends who live out in Tampa. So we go to the other end. And the Gulf is interesting because if you don't know, the Gulf is very shallow. Doesn't matter how far you go out.
Really? Okay.
Go out 50, 40 miles, it's maybe 120 feet of water. It's like, what? You go out here 10 miles, you got 300 feet of water. It's crazy. I know David can tell me where he lives, you see all the sharks come in, don't you, David? Right? I don't know what time of the year, they all come down the coast and they're all in the water right in front of your house. Yeah, so, that's a different life.
Yeah.
Would I do it again? No, I don't think so.
Is most of your cooking related to fish, or do you like to cook other things?
I cook everything. I cook a lot of fish I don't catch, like shellfish, the non-fish, shellfish, mussels, clams, and lobster. I cook all those. But
I can tell that Orthodox upbringing really did not stick.
I don't mix the fish with the meat.
Oh, interesting. So how about the meat with the milk? That's another story. Anyway. Okay. Well, it's been so wonderful, Bob, to have you as our guest. I so appreciate you coming and talking with us.
Go to my daughter again. So.
Oh, okay.
And your daughter too.
Where's my cousin? I don't see Linda. She's there.
Yeah, she's there, but just her name. We don't see her face.
I know.
So we thank them for coming too.
We get
there's Linda Kerner.
Okay.
My family is very good. We get together every Sunday night as a family, and we Zoom every Sunday night. So I see these two ladies, my grandchildren, her child, her sons and daughter, and we see them every Sunday. So it's
That's great.
We've done this for, I don't know, a long time. My sister-in-law, Debbie Cooper, does it, sets it all up for us. So all I have to do is press the button and we have a meeting every Sunday. And, see them and, it's interesting. And now I found out last week that my daughter will be here for Passover, which is a shocking.
Oh, wonderful.
Even more shocking, my grandkids will be here.
That's great. That's wonderful. Really wonderful.
I want to say the last thing. My both granddaughter and grandson have now been selected to play for the United States team in the Maccabean Games.
Oh, wow. That's significant. Wow.
Both of them play soccer, not for the same team, and they're one of the few brothers and sisters to go at the same time. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to Israel. But what I found out from my daughter, it's a 3-week trip. I think they only play 1 week and they tour Israel, I believe, for the other 2 weeks.
That's fabulous. What a wonderful opportunity. Mazel tov. Mazel tov to both of you, to all of you.
I think my daughter's temple would like when they come back for them to speak to the Hebrew school. Carrie, I don't know. Is that true?
Yeah, the temple wants them to come and talk to the Hebrew school. The temple also donated some money. So they're, they just asked
That's
them.
Great.
That is good. Yeah.
Really wonderful.
So that's great.
Thank you again, Bob. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming tonight for Torah of Our Lives. And stay tuned for the next episode. I will have that out to you, the information, very soon. Take care. Lila Tov, everybody.
Have a good evening. Stay well.
Hi, thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.